Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. We've got a hurling and football doubleheader to look forward to this weekend. Michael Duignan will be with us in a little while to chat hurling, but Enda McGinley is with myself and Rory now to chat about the weekend's football. And we were just chatting off air there, Enda, and Rory was sort of making the suggestion that a nice way to look and frame this weekend is sort of the nostalgic rivalry of a Tyrone Armagh meeting this weekend in the Ulster Football Championship and all the memories that it might bring back for somebody like you and the good old heydays. 20 years ago, it feels like it has gone by in a flash. So give me a sense of what this rivalry has meant to you over the years and maybe some of your own personal highlights.
Yeah, 20 years after, and I'm still feeling a knock I picked up from Francie Bellew back in the semi-final. So, look, 2005 is hard to believe, 20 years ago. But those were easily the most tense games. It was insufferable sort of tension and pressure. The two teams were obviously at probably the peak of their powers. And the tension in the stands on the ground, it was as hard on supporters, those games, as it was on the pitch. And the intensity level on the pitch was unmatched across my career, certainly. Like just the physicality, the hits, every ball, and it was before the era of controlled possession. So looking back now, it looks like kamikaze stuff. But it was look.
Can you believe it's 20 years, Enda?
It's hard to believe, but that's what middle age does to you. Everyone sort of concertinaed up, but no, they were. It was a phenomenal time for both counties, and I think it was that classic thing that both counties made each other better, if you know what I mean. So, phenomenal rivalry. Obviously, always nice to look back on from a Tyrone point of view, because overall we came out on top. And I think the high watermark, strangely as it seems, you obviously have the drawn match, the Ulster final, the drawn match, and then the semi-final. The Mechanic Cup game in 2006 in January that attracted 20,000 to Casement sort of sums up what that era was. We had lost all run of ourselves. It was, I still remember actually strangely driving into Casement, and on the bus we were just, this is nuts, 20,000 for a Mechanic Cup game. But that was what 05 led to. It was crazy times.
Yeah. Do you know what though, Rory? Maybe it's just the nostalgic piece of us where you grow up and you remember those days. But there are some teams that just stay with you. And I think that Armagh breakthrough in 2002, so many of us remember it. But then that Tyrone era of 03, 05, 08 and what it meant. I don't know. You just remember certain periods of your life, and that team will always stay with me.
Could not agree more. I mean, if you look at the names, like the household names, Brian McGuigan, Stephen O'Neill, Owen Mulligan, Peter Enda, Philly Jordan, Ryan McManaman. I mean, they were like, and then on the Armagh side with Marsden, Oisin McConville, Kieran McGeaney himself. I mean, it was a fascinating time for Gaelic football. It was a real coming of age for Ulster football. Obviously, we had seen Ulster sort of get on top in the early 90s and go on a run from 91 to 94 where a different Down 1-2, Derry 1-1 and Donegal 1-1. And then we'll say there was a kind of a period then where it was up for grabs for everyone. But this was a real coming of age for Ulster, and it was two teams that had never won the All-Ireland before, and I think that's what brought a novelty to it. And I suppose that's why, and particularly sometimes I often find that when it's two fat dad teams, particularly in a final, it can be a little bit insular from the rest of the island, and people will say down in our neck of the woods aren't as engaged by it. But I think this just grabbed people, and those battles and just the quality of the football that was played back then, the intensity of it, the stories, and it was, they were just superb. Two fantastic teams. And I suppose Armagh, having won it in 2002, did that drive you on, Enda?
Oh, without a doubt. Very, very similar to the current situation where Armagh winning it. We didn't see Armagh as a better team than us. We knew they were an excellent team. There was no doubt about that. We knew they'd been longer on the road and they deserved that All-Ireland in 2002, but it only made us realise, hang on a minute, that absolutely should be us. There is no reason why we can't go on and win this. And so them winning in 2002 absolutely had an impact on our mindset and the achievability of that first ever All-Ireland win from a Tyrone point of view, that it shouldn't be this otherworldly thing, that it was very much within our range. And obviously Mickey got appointed and he certainly hammered that point home on numerous occasions. But yes, obviously now Armagh winning it last year, and Armagh coming from Division 2 and not one of the expected challengers this time last year. Nobody was thinking Armagh was going to win the All-Ireland. Armagh went and won it. And similarly, there has been, not just in Tyrone but across the board, a feeling that because we're now out of that Dublin dominant era, that the All-Ireland is there for the taking. Add in the new rules and everything else, and that's why it feels like such an open field this year. Armagh will relish the fact that plenty of teams are saying, well, Jesus, if Armagh won it, why can't we do it? In that very statement, there's a disrespect of what Armagh has achieved. And lots of teams now think, well, we can take Armagh. And for me, this weekend is the first true challenger to Armagh to step up and take that shot. I think Armagh will relish that quite fine.
I think you're right. And I do think they will feel disrespected for that very reason, that everybody's saying, oh, sure, Galway should have won that All-Ireland. Oh, sure, Donegal were Ulster champions. They didn't even win Ulster. You know, they won't lack for motivation because having lost the last two Ulster finals on penalties as well, you would imagine that there's something in there that'll say they want this Ulster title as well, and as much as they want an All-Ireland. And there's a lot driving this team still.
Yeah, and I have to say I've been really impressed. I've seen them 2-3 times live during the National League and in the Championship as well. I think as All-Ireland champions coming in, and it's something Tyrone we have struggled with obviously in the past. I think their spring campaign, their winter/spring campaign has been very impressive. It has shown me everything that I would want to see of a team in their position. They have added in a few newcomers really, really nicely, likes of Callum O'Neill and McCormick there at cornerback. Really impressed with him. Their established players look hungry, look lean, look in shape. It's very often you come back off the All-Ireland holiday and everything else and you've wintered well, so to speak. They have come back lean and looking ready for more. There is immense depth, similar to Galway, similar to Donegal, two for me of the top runners for it. So that depth is there. It's challenged at the minute with their injuries, but just the mood from them, the moments where they've really clicked into gear, I think they look really, really good. Has it been consistent? Absolutely not. Even in the same matches, we've seen big swings, but that's probably been the way for all teams. Like that control thing that Armagh did have in their locker, the rules have changed that completely. But they've got strong midfield, they've got scoring forwards, they've got tenacious defenders, they've a massive work ethic, they've massive speed and power, which I think is absolutely crucial in the game. So no, they're in a really, really good place. The key thing is it's hard to get a handle on their injuries at the minute. Mm-hmm. They have multiple injuries, where they are, how much they'll risk it for this match. Looking at the longer term will be interesting. If a player is almost there, do they risk him here? Do they hold him back another week or two and make sure that he's good for the group stages? Those things will be a factor, but they've certainly the strength and depth to cope.
It's a bit of an information vacuum around all that though, Rory, isn't it? Because
it is. It's a very good way of putting it. You
just don't know what's going on here, you know?
No, and it's such a hard game to call. I mean, you couldn't really, you might have an inkling one way or the other, but I think, look, if you look at the farm lines, I mean, when they met in the league, that's nearly sometimes your best barometer, but it was very early in the league. The weather was atrocious. Armagh were at home. They were obviously going to be up for it, and they put a bit of a lesson on Tyrone on that given night. Now, I don't know if you can read a huge amount into that, given the conditions, the weather, and how much things have changed since. We know Malachy is a championship animal. He lives for championship, right? And also you'd expect to see an absolutely different Tyrone. And I didn't really feel we saw full throttle Tyrone the last time against Cavan. I didn't think they needed to be full throttle. Similarly for Armagh, while they kind of stuttered their way through the first half against Antrim, they got the job done in a fairly professional sense for a finish. But again, you're not really sure. We've seen, like, for instance, Tyrone were relegated with 7 points, but finished the league really well. Armagh have had such a peculiar off-season as All-Ireland champions. So there's to go back to your point, there's so much unknowns going into it. It's very, very hard to get a form line on it. And it's like, hopefully Dara will play. If Dara plays, I think that's a massive boost from a Tyrone perspective. But if I was to call it, I just have a feeling about Tyrone. I just have a feeling that Tyrone are working towards something, and we may see that on Saturday.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny in that information vacuum? Considering that Peter works with us and we sit with him for hours on a Sunday.
He'd tell you nothing.
What's the story? Is he playing? You get nothing from him. I said he's going to be.
Famously, we were in a club championship semi-final or final one time. We were playing Carrickmore, his good wife's club, and his good wife's brother would have been a very prominent player, Ronan McGinley, for Carrickmore. And famously, Peter had a rib injuries and didn't trust his good wife enough to tell her about the rib injuries until after the game. So Peter and secrets go hand in hand.
I'm telling you, if I needed somebody to keep the state secrets, I'd send that man in anyway, that's for sure. What's your gut feeling, Enda, though? Let's say even with the Dara situation, would you want to play him and see him now? Or would you say, do you know what, I'm happy enough, there's bigger fish further down the line, and whatever happens in Ulster, we're going to need him a little bit later in the year? Would you throw the dice, or what would you do?
As a club manager, I think personally we should wrap Dara up cotton wool, send him off on holidays and let him come back in 2-3 months' time well rested. No, I think they will be cautious. They'll be cautious with Dara. If he's good to go, they'll play him. But if it's a niggle there, and depending on the niggle, so some injuries, there's a risk that they'll be a wee bit sore, but afterwards, but a very low risk of actual long-term damage or setting the thing back. So if it's that type of thing, like a joint irritation, well then I think he might play because he doesn't want to miss too much time either, and he is important to the team, and he knows how to manage himself through games. If it's an injury, however, the likes of a muscle injury that's thereabouts, a setback now and you're out for 6 weeks, and you're also, even when you're back after 6 weeks, you're minding that muscle injury for the next 2-3 months. So the nature of the injury will vary the decision making, because the risk profile will differ from injury to injury. So both injuries he might be fit, but both injuries carry a much different risk profile. And in terms of that, this is not the game. Yes, it's one they want to win. Yes, it's one they want a performance. It is not one that defines their season. That's true for both sides.
Yeah. And I think it's actually funny, because I think it's the same for Donegal, Rory, when you're trying to manage the load of a lot of these significant players who you're going to need a lot of later in the year. The road that all of them are having to travel in Ulster right now is just so heavy compared to what... I know Kerry got a good test off Cork last weekend, and I don't know what sort of a test Dublin are going to get off Meath this weekend, but it's certainly not the same barometer that they're being tested against for these players in the white heat of battle.
Derry, Monaghan, Down, just to get to an Ulster final. It's some path for Donegal to travel now. And look, I think they'll just have a bit too much quality for Down. Down relegated down to Division 3. Donegal are playing at a higher level. They're like, Donegal have massive ambitions. I think they'll go after Ulster, and then we know that Michael Murphy wasn't being brought back to win Ulster championships. Like you would imagine, the conversation at the start of the year between himself and Jim was, there's one big prize we're going for here. And So look, they're just playing at a higher level, and you would have to expect Donegal to win to set up a Donegal Tyrone Ulster final, and they're meeting in the under-20s final because Tyrone had a good win again last night against an excellent Derry team. So that was a really good win for Tyrone. So you could potentially have a double header there of Tyrone Donegal finals, and sure, wouldn't it be a good idea to throw them on as a double header together?
It would
Where
be.
would we ever have that idea of playing an underage game in front of the county senior game?
We never heard that one before.
Speaking of going back in years, I think Donegal's strength and depth is frightening. Like I was sort of noting down key players, because for me, the Down win over Fermanagh was based hugely on their dominance of midfield through Oran Murdoch, who had a massive game for them, and then Daniel Guinness, who sort of lined out midfield as well, but he's much more of an attacking threat. He got the key goal for them. But Donegal just have so many men that they can, not easily, but there's no sweat on Jim McGinnis thinking, how do I negate the opposition's main players, and if I negate them with my key players, have I still men left over to do enough damage? Well, easily yes on both counts. Donegal have such strength across that middle third in terms of the key size thing. They have all the pace in the world in terms of their counter-attacking ability. And they've got the strength off the bench, like Jamie Brennan and Oisin Gallen has been their two subs the last day. Now, in terms of that thing of saving players, long term, you still have my gut feeling would still be Michael Murphy maybe come Croke Park games, those big games where you're looking at big momentum shift maybe coming into the last 20 minutes. Michael Murphy coming off the bench would just be massive for Donegal, and I think they can afford that, but there's no better way of getting him up to speed than playing him full games now. And then you can keep opposition thinking, is he going to start? Is he not going to start? Whenever they come to an Ulster final, be it against Tyrone or Armagh. So it's all playing perfectly to Jim McGinnis' script, as we all probably would have expected it to. I agree with Rory. I think they'll have too much of a Down. They're playing at a different level. Down, look, they beat Monaghan in the league, which was a big win. They ran Meath and Cork really tight in the league. So they had a decent Division 2 campaign. But just looking at the two groups of players, Donegal massively outranked Down in this one. Does that mean it's guaranteed? No, but it's as close as you can get for me in an Ulster Championship match.
Yeah, I think that's fair on both counts. What about Leinster then? Because Rory, I know you do. You mentioned underage in Ulster. Similar situation with maybe a small changing of the guard in Leinster as well. You just wonder how long that takes to filter through. And, you were sort of outlining what you're seeing, but it's just hard to understand how long is this going to take in terms of a project. Yeah,
I was in Darver actually on Tuesday night. We had a young lad playing for Dublin. They were beaten by Louth. An excellent Louth team, by the way. And Louth are definitely, there's something brewing within Louth. And that'll be an excellent game. That will be a fascinating contest because there's something really at stake in that fixture. Your Sam Maguire status really is up for grabs. It's arguably the most important game of the weekend, given your status being affected by what ends up happening. And but is the challenge going to come to try and topple Dublin after having effectively a hegemony, like they're 20 years dominant in the province now? It's probably not going to happen this weekend, but I do think it is coming. I think Leinster is starting to improve its competitiveness. I think Meath are definitely producing a better calibre of player. Kildare obviously are. They've won a couple of Leinsters now and won an All-Ireland actually 2 years ago. So there is definitely an improvement in the standards across Leinster. Will it be good enough to topple them this year? Absolutely not. You just wouldn't know. I think the biggest disappointment really is they've decided to take the games out of Croke Park in an effort to try and boost attendances, and apparently the ticket sales are still atrocious, which will give you an indication really of where Leinster football stands right now. But I think the game in Tullamore between Louth and Kildare is one to really watch now, and it'll be a proper old school championship match because not only a Leinster final place on the table, but obviously an opportunity to play Sam Maguire Cup football afterwards too.
Yeah, and to be honest, of the weekend's football games, that is actually the biggest prize on offer here, Enda.
Yeah, which is probably a sad reflection of our provincial competitions. That is the main thing. I think for the two teams, I don't think Tailteann Cup for the teams at a certain point in their development. I think Tailteann Cup isn't a booby prize at all. I think it'd be absolutely fine to go into it in the right place for them. But for Kildare, because there's always this sense of Kildare trying to gain momentum, and it's been so tough for them to gain a momentum. And obviously Brian Flanagan's in, they've got promotion into Division 2, but even that wasn't feel to get the great sort of form.
Wasn't very convincing, like, was it?
And then it just tailed off, and they lost 3 of their last 4 games. They're sort of the most meaningful opponents, Clare and Offaly. They lost to both them, and then Offaly again in the league final. So that doesn't give you. And then the Westmeath performance in the last game, brilliant from a resilience point of view, but unconvincing from a form point of view would probably be your summation of that coming out of it. So again, they're just looking for that momentum, and you would feel going back, losing this, which wouldn't be like Louth. They're a good team, a well-respected team now within Leinster, seen probably through their form and through their position in the league as the second team in Leinster, which is, I think, completely fair. But for them, so to lose to Louth wouldn't be a disaster, but to back down the Tailteann Cup would just feel as if, are we making any progress at all? And that sense of progress is key for that Kildare project for me. Louth, similarly, they've been pushing hard. They've had difficulties in the league in terms of injury load, but still actually came through then well in the end and survived. But again, to go down to the Tailteann would be a real sucker punch and would feel like a backward step for them. So Tailteann Cup playing isn't the worst thing in the world, but for these two teams it would certainly be against their long-term project aims to be down there. It would certainly be a backward step. Really well set up game. Mulroy, will he play or not? Sam, he warmed up a lot, or he took full part in the warm-up in their last game, and yet he himself had said a month ago that it was a 2-month injury. So again, it's hard to know that. But for these teams, in difference maybe than Tyrone, Donegal, Armagh that I was speaking about earlier, where they mightn't risk players at a key phase, for Kildare and Louth, this game does carry, as we're saying, a different weight, and they might, if he's anywhere close, I think they will play him. Kildare were struggling against Westmeath massively in the middle sector until Ray Conlon went off, and yes, Kildare made a great comeback of it, but the loss of Ray Conlon was central to how that game panned out. Louth are really, really strong across that middle third, particularly Tommy Durnan, who came back in the last day as well. They've Greg Lennon back. They've Grimes in there. They have a strong middle third. So that could be crucial this weekend.
What's your sense on what's a good day for Meath against Dublin in the other game then? Because we saw Wicklow take Dublin to 9 points in Auckram. It was brilliant. Rory's right. The ticket sales have been an absolute disaster for the game in Portlaoise. So it's certainly not going to be maybe an atmospheric day. But for Meath fans who will travel there, what are they thinking is a par performance?
Yeah, well, I'll start by not wanting to take a dig at our erstwhile Dublin ones, but I always do have a wry smile. I was on with Wheelo the last day, and it was at one stage he had the classic throwaway comment of, the Dubs love to travel.
Yeah.
I call crap on that every time. They love to travel because they hardly ever have to do it.
Exactly.
In terms of overall supporting numbers that travel, it's a tiny percentage that travel. And here we are 2 games in a row, and suddenly they're not actually in much.
And also,
traveling
it's
again.
Wicklow and Portlaoise. We're talking an hour here.
Absolutely. You know? So compare the travelling that other supporters across the county have to do repeatedly throughout the summer. You're asked to travel 2 or 3 times. So anyway, the fact that it's out of Croke Park, Dublin have not been good out of Croke Park this year. It's been quite a definite correlation between their in Croke Park performances, which have at times been really excellent, and out of Croke Parks, which most of the time have actually been really quite poor. Most of their defeats in the National League came out of Croke Park. So the fact that it's in Portlaoise is interesting from a Meath point of view. The goalkeeper issue in Dublin is a real key point of view. They had major issues. They've obviously had they're on their 4th keeper so far. Is Cluxton back fit again? If he's not, Dublin have issues in midfield. Brian Howard has been holding his own there and has been the key man numerous times, but there's still a weakness there in that middle third given their loss of their key men over the winter. and Meath are very, very strong in the middle third. Meath have vulnerabilities in terms of a running a pacey attack. Offaly exposed that, and Dublin with Con O'Callaghan and that, they are excellent through the hands, and they will punish you at times with pace, though they don't always go with maybe the pace that they could. So there's enough opportunity in this game for me to really, really go after. They've had 2 high scoring performances. They've dealt with difficulties in the camp, and they managed to rally, circle the wagons. The last day they came out well down at half time against Offaly, and if there was cracks in the dressing room, that would have come out at that time, and instead we've seen a 17-point swing without Jordan Morris on the pitch, which was a remarkable performance. So Meath do have a chance, their best chance in years, to put up a really, really credible performance. So you're asking what would be a good Meath performance? I think they have to put Dublin to the absolute pin of their collar, and even win it. It's much more on the cards now than it has been for many, many years. So if they fail to turn up, and if Dublin switch on a performance and really blow them away, again, we're talking about Kildare and Louth being set back. I think a dominant Dublin performance would depress everybody in Leinster.
That's the fear, though, Rory, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And but like, I think Enda, those points Enda made there are really like, you now look, Cork didn't get over the line, but it's certainly something to look at from a Meath perspective, where you're going in against one of the established leading contenders and you still manage to put it up to them. You get stuck in, you be physical, you be aggressive, you try and throw them off their stride, you do all of the basics, and then you just try and give yourself a chance or a foothold in the game. Trust your shooters, particularly your 2-point shooters, and Meath have 2-point shooters.
Yeah.
You know, and there could be elements at play as well, with the wind, without the wind. The forecast for Sunday is a bit mixed. Again, it's quite an open field in Portlaoise. So all of these things could come into play. It's not going to be the cosy environment for Dublin, as Enda mentioned, in that Croke Park normally is. And yeah, it's an opportunity, but we've been here before with Meath in the same way we've been here before with Cork. And can you really trust them?
Yeah. Well, look, lots of teams have had opportunities against the big guns so far, and we are yet to have a dragon slayed in the championship. Are we going to get one this weekend, Enda? Is your gut telling you that we might?
No, I don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I think one of the fears with the new rules would be that the dominant teams with the better players will win more. The new rules favours teams with the better players, the better skill, the ability to go at speed and execute their skills at speed cleanly. Like take Meath, they missed numerous chances the last day. They missed goal chances the last day. Those simple chances through the hands, clinical finishing, that's where the game is at now, at speed. Both teams will get really good opportunities to counter-attack when the other team is vulnerable. But what looks like good opportunities actually take the highest level of skills, because you're doing simple skills, clean decision making at pace, and the top teams and the top players do the simple things better. So for me, that's where the rules are favouring teams at the minute, and the likelihood of a giant slayer, as you say, is low.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see what the weekend throws up. And for now, thanks a million for being with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
What I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it! It's over the bar!
Okay, Michael is with us now to chat hurling. How are you keeping?
I'm good, Jacqui, yeah.
Good.
Flat out as they say down this way.
Absolutely. Well, no better time of the year to be at it, because you look at the hurling championship, and particularly in Munster, it just started full throttle last weekend, Michael, didn't it?
It did. And I suppose everyone had their views last week. And I was only thinking before I come on this morning that we spent so much time trying to predict what's going to happen, and really we haven't a clue. And we've said all that, but I've got 25 years out of it anyway, so I don't know about the rest of it. Look, you saw it, you know, and I funny, a lot of what I say about the game, I don't know, people either like it or don't like it, but a lot of it is instinct of what I actually think might be going on, and on the ground. And the Limerick Tip game, I didn't go along with the narrative. Like, a lot of Tip people were very negative, but I thought they had a good league. I thought it kind of half through the league final with a few subtle positional things, and bits and pieces. And I wouldn't say shrewd, but they didn't definitely go all out. And I expected that to be close. Did I expect a game that we had? How could you? And the weather and everything else. And, it was super. And Cork went along with the script. And I said it before the game down there on pitch side, that I expected Clare to start slowly because they haven't had a match maybe at that level for quite a while. Maybe they had to have a lot of their players. That was a bit of a myth. I see 12 of the team that started last week did play the game against Cork in the league when they got hammered. Cork had only 10 of the same team. But they hadn't really got up to the pitch. I think anyone that won in All-Ireland, unless you're off the Dublin football team, the great Dublin team, maybe the great Kilkenny team, the Limerick team, the great Kerry team in the 70s, that wins 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 All-Ireland medals. Most of us mere mortals that can manage to win a couple maybe from a medium-sized county or a small county. When you win in All-Ireland, it takes a lot out of you, mentally, physically, celebrating, everything else. But do you have the hunger coming back the following year? Will you be the same? And that was the thing about Clare. And maybe they weren't sure themselves. And I actually think the game turned on it when Cork got the goal, and Alan Connolly, who was having a great battle with Adam Hogan, came out and tapped him on the helmet. I don't know if you saw that. It was like poking the bear. And the intensity definitely lifted after that. And I'm sure, I don't know, but I'd say it was reference that, it's small things at times. And the second half then was a completely different thing. And I did expect Clare to improve. Did I expect them to come back from 12 points down and draw and everything that happened in the Cork sort of mini collapse? I wouldn't call it a full collapse, but, Shane Barrett sending it off obviously had a massive impact. But Clare just got much more physical and aggressive, and there was a lot of off-the-ball stuff and stuff that comes with Championship hurling. And Cork didn't seem to handle it great and took off further forwards that had been going so well, and we ended up with them touching or for a draw. So it was a madcap Sunday afternoon, and no more off than they were, maybe except for Waterford, who hadn't played. So they're not too far behind the posse.
Yeah, I'd say they might be happy enough having watched what happened. You do wonder what sort of a position it leaves Cork and Tip in this weekend, though, Michael, because for both of them having come through what was such a ferocious battle, there is really, really crucial points now on the line where one of them is going to have to stake a massive claim to put themselves forward of getting out of the province now at this point.
Yeah, this is, from a supporter's point of view and from our point of view, media, everyone, it's an absolutely brilliant format. And going around to the home venues is brilliant, like Ennis again last week, but we've seen it with Cork. Cork will be sold out on Sunday, Limerick, Thurles, they're all great venues. Waterford, Walsh Park, they'll fill that as well. So it's brilliant for us all, but from a players and a management and a group point of view, it's extremely difficult. And Leinster, I know it's not as competitive, but they are competitive matches. They're championship matches, and you have 5 matches in 6 weeks, and the Munster lads will have 4 matches in 5 weeks or whatever. So it's really difficult. What you'd referenced there, that sort of hunger, the physical recovery, the mental recovery, the depth of your squad, injuries, players not getting picked, trying to keep players happy, keep them in the right frame of mind if they're not starting and coming on. All of those factors are in your face day in, day out, and there's no time to reflect really fully. You're out of one match, you have a day or two to recover, you're back to training, and you're trying to get right then for the weekend again. So it's absolutely manic, and we just talked about it before as well, about you're coming out of a league campaign that's only over a couple of weeks ago as well, like Cork and Tipper in the league final. So that was always a thing in my head. Can Cork keep up this level of form right throughout a really competitive Munster Championship and on? And they did brilliantly in the first half. But to get back to next Sunday, I think in a way it's a great chance, I think, for Cork to come back again and say, right, look, we're very disappointed the way we finished. We played brilliant hurling for 45 minutes, so let's get back there. And there's no reason that they shouldn't, except for maybe a couple of injuries. Like Rob Downey went off with his knee fairly heavily strapped. Shane Barrett obviously sent off, and he's not going to be available, so that'll make a difference. Declan Dalton will probably come in there, see what they'll do at the back. But I think Tip will be really buoyed up. Like Liam Cahill has that sort of infectious thing. It took him a couple of years, I think, when he came back to Tip. He had to keep faith in a lot of the older players. Now, he still kept a few of them, and they're still making, like Noel McGrath's last 20 minutes, was unbelievable. Like in the heat of battle, to have that coolness and vision that he showed. But so it's not going to be like the league final. There's not going to be that sort of runaway. That's not going to happen. And I think any of these Munster matches now, for whatever reason, week on week, and we've seen that over the years, like the same with Waterford and Clare. On paper, you're saying Clare, All-Ireland champions, go down to Waterford. Waterford have been in 1B, that have struggled over the last few years. That'll be gone out the window. Waterford have improved a lot over the league. Peter Queally has really brought back in that Waterford spirit, and they've got a lot of players back from injury. They're still down a couple of key players that are away, but they have a lot of players back, and they're going to be really competitive as well. And that's the way it's going to be. It's going to be about, and it's what these matches, I think, particularly playing the Limericks of this world, the Kilkennys of this world over the years, it takes physically a lot. If you really try to be up for every game, and particularly against Limerick, so that may take a lot out of Tip physically from last Sunday, because Limerick are the benchmark when it comes to physicality still. So what's left in the tank? So we don't have the answers to all those questions, but the strength and depth, as I say, the freshness of your squad, being lucky with injuries, all those things count. And look, it'll be another pulsating weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think just Cork Tip in a sold-out Páirc Uí Chaoimh, though, Rory, we were chatting about football, harking back to the olden days. This has the feel of a blockbuster Munster Championship game, doesn't it?
Yeah, like there's two fixtures when you're young, when you're growing up in Cork, there's two fixtures that you're sort of brought up on in a football context against Kerry and in a hurling context, Tip. And that was just, there were those two fixtures. Like there's a folklore and there's a lore and there's just this incredible sort of, there's just a vibe around Cork Tip. And I think, look, the atmosphere below there this week and the build up to it will be special. The park on Sunday will be rocking, and it will be rocking now. And hopefully the weather is good. And I think we could get a similar, I'd say what we'll end up getting is a very similar type game to what we got 2 years ago on the Saturday night under lights when it was, I think it was on GAA Go at the time. And I think, was it 420 to 226? It was a mad game again, where Cork, I think, were down a couple of maybe 5 or 6 points late on. Shane Kingston, I think he sprung for a goal. I parked last year. Last year was just, as I said, it was an aberration. That was just a kind of a weird game. I wouldn't read anything into that. I think 2 years ago was a much better kind of a line of form in terms of what we might get. Now the personnel and the personalities have changed, but I think we are in for more absolute blockbuster stuff again.
And hopefully Rob Downey, okay. The word seems to be positive, Rory, from what I'm hearing from Pat Ryan. I think they're hopeful.
But Michael makes a perfect point. The way this format is structured, 5 games in 6 weeks or 4 games in 6 weeks, week on week. Shane McGrath is going to be speaking about it in his column, which will be going up on the RT online today. It isn't fun. It isn't fun for players, and there's something wrong when the fun aspect goes out of it. I think we have to remember it is still amateur, and that to me there's something wrong. And I don't know whether it's the calendar, whether it needs more room to breathe. Given the nature and the phonetic nature, do you have to allow every 2 weeks? I don't know, but
Rory,
sorry, Michael.
The split season is brilliant for clubs, but it's a disaster. But I wouldn't say disaster is probably not the right word, but it's very hard on inter-county players. And you might remember before Christmas, there was a debate at Central Council about the November non-training month. And all the medical evidence was there that players need that month off, not just physically, but mentally as well. And look, I've an inter-county player in the house here. I know what it's like. And I was one myself for a long time, but in different times. But we got our break, right? We played our league matches before Christmas. And I think that's something we need to look at again. Because even if the club championship was going on, you're only down a couple of, a club, 2 clubs are in
it's into the provincial club championships at that stage, which is very small.
It's only a club here and there. If you're down a few players from one club, what about it? Play a couple of league matches, take a little bit of the pressure off. Possibly, that's one thing. Now, I know that's again, you're still maybe you'd also need maybe the cooperation. This is what disappointed me before Christmas. Duignan spoke strongly in favour of the break, and I backed him at Central Council, and it got over the line. But it was at the expense of the pre-season competitions. Now, the pre-season competitions have been brilliant over the years. The McKenna Cup in Ulster, obviously, all these, but they're not. There's not scope for them in the calendar as things stand at the moment, right? To be fair to players, and I'm thinking of players here. And that month was off. We in Offaly, Mickey Hart had come in as football manager. I said to Mickey Hart and Declan Kelly, lads, you can't train. And Mickey said, look, I'm trying to get to know these lads and blah, blah. Made these arguments. I said, you're still not training. And the same with our hurlers, right? And, not easy conversations to have. Yeah. But every other county, or a lot of other counties just went ahead and kept training. And the GAA, I was so annoyed with with the GAA for not clamping down, they'll make the point of what do we do? We're not the Gestapo. You can't turn up at training sessions. But can you? Like, what's the point of making a rule if you don't enforce it? Yeah. County boards have to stand up like we had to do and say no. And we didn't train. Our hurlers went off on a holiday in December for a week, and they came back then and started training. And we're trying to get there. We're still a long way behind the top teams in Offaly. But we qualified out of 1B in the league. We beat Dublin and Croke Park during the league. Like, nobody died because we didn't train. The players were doing their own bit. They always train on their own. So if you're going to be serious about our players and looking after our players, you're going to have to find a way of giving them rest. It might be slightly contradiction me saying a couple of weeks, but you could play a couple of league matches and maybe take it handy in January when the weather is brutal, January and February, and look at this and maybe pushing on our championships. I think we'd all love to see, it does. I know from being chairman of the county, looking at our clubs, we have 13 weeks, I think, to run all our club championships, and we're a dual county. And if we don't have that period that we have now, we can't play replays in the county final. You'll be back to winner on the day. You're going to get in, and you will always have consequences for your decisions in the GAA, no matter what you do. But I still think, and we've talked about it for many, many years, as long as I've been playing for, and throughout my whole GAA career, which is a long, long time now, we've always had these discussions. But there has to be a slightly better way. As you say, for players, they're being absolutely pounded now, and all in a few weeks' time, 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, players are gone out of the championship, before the summer really even starts, which can't be right.
Yeah, and the big test then as well is it probably favours the bigger counties, Jacqui, because the bigger the panel you have, the easier you'll be able to cope. And I suppose from a Cork perspective on Sunday, that is the only thing that, in fairness to Pat, and they do have a very deep panel. They have quite a big pick. So if Rob Downey's out, obviously Barrett is missing. We don't know what the story is with Cormac O'Brien or Kieran Joyce. But look, he has plenty of depth, but he's going to need it, because this is a Tipperary team coming, and they're coming, as Michael mentioned, very buoyed by an outstanding performance last Sunday against Limerick.
Yeah, and the thing is, one slip up and suddenly you're out. And I think that's probably, like, if you look at Waterford, Michael, and the way that they must be feeling after the last number of years, having not been able to get out of Munster, having been on a downward trajectory, suddenly there are sort of green shoots, and there's a feeling that if they were to get a win this weekend, suddenly they'd find themselves ahead of the posse, which I don't think anybody would have seen coming. It's just been such a weird start with the two draws that suddenly Waterford are actually the ones in the hot seat.
Yeah, look, and they're always a team over the last number of years that when I look at before the championship starts, I keep saying, look at the players they have. Like, they have to have a chance of getting out of Munster every year. And then for whatever reason, and it can happen very easily, that momentum goes out of a county, a couple of management changes, a couple of players get injured. Like Ty DeBurke has been such a massive influence. Like, he's come back from 2 cruciates and a ruptured Achilles tendon, which is incredible. And to be back playing at the very top of his game again. But then a few lads went away to Australia. But you see what they're doing now for Peter Queally, Stephen Bennett, mixed up Stephen, with his knees. I don't know if you're reading those comments about, like, he basically has no cartilage, no anything in his knees, and he's playing away, and his hips and everything else. It's an awful way to be, and it's probably not right that an amateur player should be going through that. But they're willing to do it for Waterford and for Peter Queally, who has been involved in the background for a long time before he got his chance as manager. And I agree with you. Look, it's going to come down, I'd say, unless there's a freakish turn of events, it's going to come down to last weekend again in Munster. We saw last year, the Waterford led tip late on, but there was huge consequences. And teams like Cork and Limerick and have got through by the skin of their teeth over the last couple of years. So it's not going to be clear cut. But I've really liked what I've seen. Obviously Waterford beat Offaly in the league. I know it's Division 1B, they were way ahead and Offaly made a comeback. But there's a lot to like about, Mark Fitzgerald is playing outstanding hurling, Desi Hutchinson, Ty DeBurke, the Bennetts, they have a lot of really good players. Maybe a little bit suspect in the full back line. They're very good maybe for the half back line up. But it'll still be a big ask to beat Clare. But I think Clare, that game is going to have taken a big toll on Clare. And age as well is another thing. Stop Patrick Horgan, what a game he had last Sunday. I don't know about you, you 2 Cork people. I was very surprised he was taken off. Now, maybe you're keeping an eye on what we've talked about. Yeah, the next number of weeks, he was just unbelievable. I've never seen him looking as fit, and he says that himself. But you take John Conlon, who is 36 in June, who was very slow to start, and he won't mind me saying I'm a big supporter of his, but Darragh Fitzgibbon gave him a run around. But that was always going to happen because he hadn't played at that intensity for 12 months at his age. But as the game went on, I know they had the extra man, he really came into it. So he could come along and really benefit from the game last week, whereas another player that's maybe in their 30s, it could take a lot out of them. Because I found out as I got older, like you were really thankful of the first week off, in particular after a big match, that you could take it easy when I got into my 30s. And then the following week you'd ramp up again, maybe for, we might have had a game every 3 weeks that time, or whatever the case may be. So that recovery, I know there's much more professional recoveries now, but all them things are factors. And just on tip, I think what's been interesting as well is the young lads, Sam O'Farrell and Darren McCarthy in particular, they played. No, they didn't play last night for the 20s. We're trying to manage that in Offaly, and we've had a number of injuries now, and it's a disaster, really. It's very hard on the lads. But they've played them in a couple of matches. They got over the line. They took a chance last night, left them off, but they put their faith in them. But then you someone like John McGrath, who'd become a little bit of a peripheral player for the last couple of years, seemed to totally rediscover his best form. And like that has to come down to the player, but it has to come down to management as well. Because a player like John McGrath is a generational player. But to see him sitting on the bench over the last couple of years so often and maybe coming on and not making an impact is not the John McGrath. Is not one of the great players that we've seen. And then you see the 2 goals last week, the first goal in particular, just very few players can do that. So these are all the things that managers have to deal with. And it's such a complex job. You have so many people involved on your panel. And it's almost as if you invest that energy and time, maybe in 4 or 5 of them, you can get that. And then you're maybe forgetting another 4 or 5. I know it mightn't make that much sense to what I'm saying, but it's incredible. The job that inter-county managers have to do with the group, and there's so many people, selectors and medical team and everyone, kit people, nutritionists, they're all so important to the setup. So you have all that going on now, and then the adrenaline, I think, of a match and the match day situation and what it takes out of you, and maybe rows and sending offs and rows and sideline and cards and the whole lot. So it's brilliant, and it's what makes it. But that little, if you had a week off now to maybe build it up for next week and go back to maybe the crowds and all that and being affected, could be all down to some of that as well. There's loads of other things, and we'll talk about them again. But it's mad. But Waterford, I think Waterford will be licking their lips. I think they'll be saying nobody has given us a chance. It's the same thing, the age-old chip in your shoulder. Clare had it last week. And you saw the way they responded. And Waterford will have it. No one's given us a chance. Clare coming here as hot favourites. There's no real pressure on it. And sometimes when that's off you hurl with more freedom as well. So I'd expect a huge show. And whether they'll be good enough, I think Clare showed an awful lot. And I think particularly their bench, they showed the hunger that they had as well. And they lost a couple of key players. Like they have Dermot Ryan went off injured. Shane O'Donnell is wherever he is with his injury. They're very bullish about him playing, which leads me to believe that the injury is there, but maybe they're just trying to time the run with him. They've minded him so well over the last number of years and brought him into contention when they really needed him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was back sooner than even they're saying, if really depending on results. I think he might be ready to go very shortly. Clare are all of a sudden, after a terrible first half, they're in a really strong position as well. So they probably should feel they should be able to go to Waterford, soak up all what we talked about there, all the pressure, and I think the sort of raw hunger of Waterford, I think it's going to be very strong, but you'd expect them to be able to get over the line.
I think it'll be tight. I think it will be tight as well. I agree with Michael. I think it will be tight. Yeah, I think it'll be very, very tight as well. I agree with Michael. I think Waterford have a good chance in this game, and I would expect a bit of a, like, they'll bring a championship mindset again. They're at home. The place will be rammed. It's a long way for Clare supporters to travel, and we know they love giving out about travelling. So I think I give Waterford a really good shout here. They'll have to get a couple of their key matchups right. I hope Prunty is fit, because you would imagine himself and Peter Duggan on the edge of the square, that'll be worth the admission fee alone. And I give him a good shot now at this. But do you know what, Jacqui? Both these games could finish a draw again.
I think Rory, the matchups, the one I'm looking forward to the most in that game,
Desi and Adam Hogan.
Yeah, Because like Adam Hogan has to be the most annoying cornerback in the country. That's his job. Yeah. And I would hate now to see him coming, right? And his pace, he backs it up. He's absolutely in your face. But Dessie Hutchinson has to be the calmest man I've ever seen playing hurling. He does not get rattled. And in fairness to him, he got a belt on the head against us in the league final. Another could have laid down. He just got straight back up. Our full back was, just put a bit of a clip, the way the route send off been going, you could get the line very easily. He was straight back up. He's just calmness personified. His movement, his first touch, his pace, and you're going to have this other man in his face. And I think Hogan is going to find it disconcerting because I don't think he's going to have marked anyone else. I think other players react to him, but this man won't. Whether it's he's professionally trained or whatever, I don't know. But I'm looking forward to, like, there's loads of matchups, but those two that you mentioned there, or if they'll probably have to put Mark Fitzgerald back, full back, if Prunty is not back, and he'll be huge.
Not back,
halfback.
Yeah. Come here, before we move on to Leinster, I do want to ask you about that when you're saying there, Michael, about the controversies and the clips and all that. Like, obviously you're a co-com working with us all the time. And so you are listening to the referee. You're hearing what he's saying to players. The difficulty for people at home is they're not hearing. Like, I heard you saying, the referee's communicating really well. He's telling the players what's happening here and whatever. I still wonder why the general public can't get access to that information and to know that the referee is saying, well, this happened and that happened. Because I actually genuinely think it would really help the game. It would really help everybody to get an understanding of what's actually happening on the pitch.
You're 100%, Jacqui. That was my first time last Sunday being mic'd up to the ref, and it was manic, first of all, in terms of, Liam Gordon did really well. I said that during the commentary. Possibly he nearly overdid it to an extent for finish up, because lads were in his face over everything, where you see the dissent rule now in football has completely got rid of that. I think that's something that we're going to have to look at in hurling as well, because every decision was argued vehemently, and you saw him getting very irate with Tony Kelly giving him the card about reffing the game. And we've all had players, and I was going to have myself, that you're trying to influence the ref. One decision can turn a game. That's the reality of it. One line ball, one free, one whatever. But it really, I think, would give people an understanding. And I've said this, I don't like to be critical of referees, because it's particularly in hurling, it's such a difficult job. It's manic. The thing is happening so fast. And I think the understanding that you get from what I listened to last Sunday would bring that to another level. It was just incredible. I think the reason it probably hasn't, because change is very, very slow in the GAA, as we all know. Very, very slow to maybe let that into the living room, and it probably puts added pressure on the refs as well. Just from a human point of view, that everything they say is being monitored and been listened to, and been there is because you're not always going to get it right or say the right thing, and there was a few choice words here and there last. But
I do think we're kind of gone beyond that. Like, and I read David Coldrick's column when he had written it at the time, saying, that obviously for that 2015 final when he was mic'd up,
10 years ago.
But that's 10 years ago. I just think we've all moved on. I think people hear choice language on, things that happen across sports, and I don't know if anybody's going to be.
Well, Jacqui, I tell you what. Yeah, well, what I suggested. It could be 10 years ago as well, was a panel of semi-professional referees in both hurling and football. Maybe your 10 best refs that would take charge of all the championship matches or something like that, right? And it's like these Hawkeye decisions and VAR, give maybe teams a couple of challenges per game or something like in tennis. But you can't stop the flow of hurling to a huge extent. But there are things you could try without going full overboard. And I think if you brought that element of professionalism or semi-professionalism into it, and then you went fully down the road you're talking about, but it was very interesting. And look, go back to your flicks and your clips and your hits and all that. Like, the other thing is, if you get it wrong, put up your hands. That's the thing, and that's why I was very irate about James Mahon sending off the Offaly player against Waterford. He was he didn't touch the Waterford player. He never touched him. There was video evidence suggested all that, and Johnny Murphy and Sean Stack were the officials involved, two very experienced officials. They should be able to go home that night and say, lads, we made a mistake here. No, that's fine. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes in commentary. We all make mistakes in everyday life. Put your hands up and say it was a mistake. But that went to a hearing the following Thursday night, and it was just not going to be overturned, which is not right. You have to be fair on your players. And that player has suffered really badly. He's lost his place in the Offaly team. He was there for the whole league. He probably had the poorest game of his life, and he won't mind me saying that, against Galway in the under-20 championship. His man scored 3 goals off him. You wouldn't score 3 goals off him. I'd say in his whole career there wasn't 3 goals off him. He's a brilliant young cornerback. it's had a big effect on this young man, and it's a wrong decision. So there are other factors, like you need to be honest and genuine in your approach, and make a mistake, fine, but put the hands up.
I think that's a really fair point, Rory, isn't it? Because all you're looking for is transparency. And that's what this would offer.
Education though as well, Jacqui, isn't it? Yeah. Education. I mean, like we're going to run a little street league there now, hurling street league in a couple of weeks' time. Big numbers, in our club. And I have a little message ready to go out to say, look, it's a zero tolerance approach to any abuse of referees. And the point being is referees know the rules. You, as a parent or a coach or a player, probably don't know the rules. And, so that's the reason that I think sometimes the technology, particularly something as ref mic, which they have, we know, in other sports, I think it would actually be a massive help, because there's a huge amount, like the numbers going to Munster Championship matches. A lot of the people are, okay, they might be dedicated club people, but some of them may not. Some of them are event junkies and they just don't know the rules. They wouldn't have a clue. You have a little earpiece plugged in, you can hear what's going on. It's a revenue stream for the GAA, and we know they love that. So, like, I don't know why the reticence that is still there. Is it a control thing? Is it an editorial thing? The effing and jeffing, look, kids hear effing and jeffing all the time. It's a modern world we live in. There's this thing called the World Wide Web. Like, I mean, it's a different world now. So I don't know. I just find there has been a sort of that change, and the progress around that has been very, very slow. And I think it's actually now been counterproductive.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay, let's chat Leinster then, because Michael, I want to get your sense of Offaly and what it has taken to get them back to the top tier in hurling, and also even just the intensity of what they played against Dublin last weekend. I know you were in Parnell Park, and just watching them getting that close to that first Leinster win and having it taken away in the last couple of minutes, the lessons that maybe are being consistently learned by this team, who look like they were on such a massive upward trajectory.
Yeah, Jacqui, look, it's been a very, very difficult journey for Offaly. I would say that over the last, I was just looking back there at some of the Galway Offaly results, 17, 18, when we were in Leinster last, like 17 was 33 points to 111, Galway won, 18 was 14 or 15 points, and then we went down, and the Dublin game was the game that relegated us out of Leinster in 18, and there was 20 points in it or whatever. So I've said this on the record. I'd have great appreciation for all the Offaly players and the whole team that have put so much in over my term, and I've moved on now for the 5 years for where we started in both hurling and football, and we made strides up and came back a bit and went up again and down again in football. And we've had, I think Liam Kearns obviously passing was a big thing, the football side. We're not going into that now, but Mickey Hart is there now, and they've got promotion this year, and we won the 20 All-Ireland, and football was kind of going in at a quicker level. It took a bit of a dunt then with Liam Kearns, but is back sort of on a better set now. But the hurling, I've said this on the record that those senior hurlers, I think there's only about 4 or 5 of the lads that were there in that time, in that sort of period. So the rest of the lads would have come in when Offaly was at its lowest in Christy Ring, had been relegated to Christy Ring. And like when you think about that, sometimes I don't think people realise where you're gone to, like
the progress in that short period of time.
Well, but even where you've gone to, like to go out of Liam McCarthy and then to go out of Joe McDonagh, which is another 5 or 6 teams, depending on the format, plus your top 11 in the Liam McCarthy, like 5 in Munster and 6 in Leinster, 11 another 5 or 6, 16 or 17. You're really gone down, like, to a low ebb. And then, as anyone knows, even at a club level, when you play at a different level, you go up one level from junior to intermediate, it's huge, from intermediate to senior, and then to county level. And then those jumps at county level are massive. They're even bigger again. So I'd have so much regard for those, largely most of that group that went in there as young fellas, as very young lads at 19 or 20, and they've worked so hard to get there, and had lots of setbacks along the way, like losing a penalty shootout to Down in the Christy Ring and not winning it that year, then winning the Christy Ring, then having a very bad run in the Joe McDonagh the following year, not even qualifying for a knockout, and then the following year beating in the Joe McDonagh final, and then to come back and win it, and then than to get there, to get over the line last year in the Joe McDonagh. And then at the same time, to see our young lads, the younger lads again, coming behind them, that lost a minor All-Ireland, lost a 20 All-Ireland, and came back and won another Leinster. Obviously had won a Leinster minor, won a Leinster under 20, beaten in the 2 finals, and to come back and win another Leinster and win the All-Ireland was massive as well. And I suppose this year has been a very difficult year because a lot of those under 20s are still underage. There's 8 of them on the senior panel. Adam Screeney's been injured all winter. Duignan, who's one of the up-and-coming real superstars, he pulled a hamstring with the club last year and just got back a month ago and ripped it badly again. He's out for the rest of the season. Shane Rigney, who's a brilliant underage talent, he's been injured for most of the winter. He's back now. There's Rory Kelly, who's a brilliant cornerback. He tore his hamstring the other night in training. So they've got about, and all those lads are on the senior panel. So it's probably proven hard to balance it. I'm not saying that's the reason for the injuries. It isn't, because they've been very well rehabbed and looked after. It's just a bit of bad luck as well. But it's been a journey, and I think, look, there's still a long way to go, Jacqui. You referenced last week, the physical power of Dublin was there to be seen. We're still not there. We competed really, really well. But Dublin just they had their process, as they call it. They kept running the ball. That's the way. Dublin play hurling in a different way, I think, than, even say most of the other top counties, in terms of they're so patient around the half-back line. They'll pass the ball 2 or 3 times until they get that opening and run and create the overlap and score. And Dublin had a few bad wides as well, to be fair. We stuck in it big time, but 1-4 to a point the last 6 or 7 minutes, you can't argue with that. And that was the learning curve. Things we talked about earlier, strength and depth, lads being injured like that, like, we can't afford that. And that'll be the big worry over the next 3 or 4 weeks, that if we lose 1 or 2 more lads and 1 or 2 more, that we don't have yet. We don't have it yet. We will have it in the next 1 to 2 to 3 years. But it's great, Jacqui. It's very positive, and the lads are very positive. They were very Saturday night, Sunday, as you should be. But now this whole week has been about getting up for the Galway match. And I suppose mentally, I think that's been a big thing. It has to have been hard for players. Even we used to play challenge matches against some of these teams, and Tip came down a couple of years ago in the preliminary quarter-final and hammered us. Cork came to town last year and we actually played really well. It was a great occasion. Cork probably not had full health. Yeah, but played really well. So it's that mental thing to say. I always say that. How many people in the dressing room here believe we're going to win the county final, or how many people believe we're going to win the All-Ireland, or how many people believe we're going to win the Leinster? If people were genuinely telling the truth, there's probably very few over the last few years. But there's no point being there unless you believe you can go back and win Leinsters and All-Irelands. And I think the players are starting to get that belief. And whether they do or they don't, that's where you have to aim. And it's been a great journey. We've had great days. Some of the underage stuff has been absolutely off the charts. But that Joe McDonagh final last year was a huge lift, I think, to reach, to go down and to get back. I took that full 5, 6, 7 years, which is a long time, in a person's life, in a player's life, and to stay with it and stick at it. So, and a huge admiration for the lads. And Galway were terrible. Like, there's no point saying they weren't, and I shouldn't be saying that when we're playing them on Sunday. But they'll be so disappointed with, for me, Haldunner right through the group. Like, there's an awful lot of good players in that team, and they just weren't up for it for whatever reason. And I would expect a backlash more than people are seeing that as an opportunity for Offaly. Well, if Galway come with the same attitude, yeah, but I would say they're going to be saying to themselves, that's not acceptable. And Micheál said it himself after the game. It's not acceptable. So I think Galway will come with that, but I think Offaly will be ready for the challenge. Like, they won't be certainly bending over, and I think it'll be a right good game. And I said, whether we have again that strength and depth coming down the stretch remains to be seen.
I think this is going to be tight, Rory. I think this is a massive game.
And there's a great traditional feel to it. I mean, when Offaly won their first All-Ireland in 81, it was Galway they beat in the final, isn't that right, Michael? And then in 85 again, their first All-Ireland in hurling, by the way. It was, there is, and like neighbouring counties. I think Michael is right. I think you're going to expect some sort of a backlash from Galway because the performance was that poor. They can't be that poor again. They showed that as well in the league when they were, I suppose, embarrassed to a certain extent by Tipperary on the first day out, and then the following week went, so they can shift their form very, very quickly. But the frenetic nature of this championship means they need to move. They need to move fast.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's 94 since Offaly beat Galway in Championship.
30 years. Yeah, it's a
well,
long
we haven't
time.
played them a huge amount yet, but there was a run in the 2010 on that Galway would have won all those games. Like the Offaly slide was probably on at that stage. So I think it's 8-4 and 1 draw over the 13. But I think, look, this will be different. And we have a strong Galway influence in our management team. That'll be a factor. Johnny Kelly is our manager. He's from Portumna. Would have been successful with Portumna. Colin Callan is their former Galway goalie. He's with us as well there. So
Kinvara, yeah.
Yeah, and we are, where I'm from in Banner, we're right on the border there over the bridge into Galway. So, like, there is that element as well. And you'd be expecting a decent crowd to come in. You know, it's taken a little while for the public in Offaly to catch on. The big supporters of the underage, but getting them again to come to the senior matches is proving a bit more of a challenge. And that's not a negative. That's just fact. It takes time. You have to earn sometimes your respect as well and earn your support. So I think that's coming now as well. So I'd expect a decent crowd, and hopefully it'll be a close game.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed, because we could do with a bit of that in Leinster for it to be competitive, to give us something, a bit of bite this weekend would be nice. Dublin Wexford might give us that, Michael, because I know I think Dublin have only lost once in 10 years to Wexford in championship meetings, but there is a growing sense that there's optimism in Wexford about what's going on. And I know Neil McManus even last weekend was saying he believes Dublin are the second best team in Leinster. I think Wexford will want to have a fight on their hands this weekend to prove that they can actually be in the mix here in Leinster as well. And I think this one could be tight too.
Yeah, look, Wexford, I was at the Wexford-Kilkenny league match. It was the most peculiar match, and we referenced the league, and you said there, Rory, I think it was Galway bounced back against Kilkenny the following week and
it was Kilkenny, yeah.
And the league can be a bit like that, up and down, you know, because you're playing week on week. But I was at the Kilkenny-Wexford match. In the first half, Kilkenny just blew Wexford away, and Wexford were down an awful lot of players. And I was doing the commentary, I referenced it quite a bit. But the one thing that I took away from Wexford Park that day was the fight of Wexford and their physical conditioning. Like, they were down from Lee Chin, and Rory O'Connor got injured very early on, but there was loads of other players missing, and they just stayed going. They kept up the pace of the game right to the end, and they got right back into it, and they lost by a few points in the end. And I was really impressed with that. But Lee Chin, and you've talked about it, and everyone is talking about him, is such an influential player. Like, every county has their talisman, but probably no county probably relies on a player as much as Wexford rely on Lee Chin.
Yeah.
And you saw the game last week with Antrim. Okay, you see the end result, Antrim win it handy. But I was on the way to Parnell Park, and I was following it on Twitter, and, you know, Jack O'Connor sent off and Antrim get down to 2 points. And, you know, it's one of those things that could go against you. If it was in Corrigan Park now, I'd say you could have had a different, but Lee Chin stood up monumental.
And he got 16 points, in fairness. That's outrageous.
He got 16 points. And he got 4 from play. And I think he got all of those maybe in the first half. He certainly got 3 of them, if not. I think he got to 4 of them. He just absolutely single-handedly said, hold on now, this is not going to happen here today. And he's in the form of his life, but he's going to need more support. And like Conor McDonald, I'm not sure where he's at. He's a big player for them. He hasn't played at all this year. Rory has been in and out. So they're certainly up front going to have to back up Lee Chin. And it's interesting. I didn't realise that you said that Wexford haven't beaten Dublin in the last 10 years only once, because so Dublin obviously have a way of playing that doesn't suit Wexford, from that point of view, and they're going to have to come to grips with that. And that's that deep running game that Dublin play is very hard to counteract. And when it goes wrong, like it did in the Leinster final last year, which I think was a blip as well, to be fair. Like, they weren't that bad. Like, the game was over early on against Kilkenny, because Kilkenny probably had the power to stop them in their tracks or break the tackle or maybe whatever the case may be. But Wexford will be aware of that. And I think I think there's some good young players in Wexford. I think it traditionally has been a hard place to go to get a result. And I think they're going to have to, again, bring that sort of fortress mentality to the place, because if you lose that, it's a big loss to you. You know, if you lose that sort of thing where you're difficult to beat at home, and whoever wins it is going to be in a massive position, because Kilkenny are going to be hard to beat. And the funny thing is, in Wexford over the last number of years haven't feared Kilkenny that much either.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
You know, it's amazing the way different teams and horses for courses. But whoever wins this will have 4 points on the board early in the campaign, and it's going to put them in a really, really strong position. You know, I agree with you, Jacqui. It's very hard to call it, because like Dublin played very well in patches against Offaly. Obviously, Offaly troubled them at times as well. Particularly, got a number of goals, and Wexford will have looked at that, and at the same time, Wexford aren't a finished article either. So it's going to be, I think it could be a bit frenzied, I'd say, to say the least. Will Wexford being at home, looking at Dublin's record, you can balance it up there yourself. I don't know. Maybe Wexford can do it at home with Lee Chin driving them forward again.
Yeah. We need to finish up here, but I think frenzy is a good word that Michael uses, Rory, because that is, I don't know, maybe it's just in comparison to football over the number of weeks when the two codes are up against each other. There just seems to be this frenetic nature about the hurling where we have absolutely, Michael, the way he started this podcast with, you can do this thing for 20, 30 years and then still not have an absolute rashers as to what's going to happen this weekend. And that's still the sense that I have in week 2 of the championship.
Like that's why I was only half joking earlier when I said, like, what price to draw in both Munster Hurling Championship matches again, or that could easily happen. It could very, very easily happen. But I would, and it the same for Leinster. I know it gets overshadowed, and we've mentioned this before, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the competitive nature of it is any less. And I suppose the games matter. The games really matter. We spoke earlier about how poor the attendances are going to be for the Leinster football semi-finals, despite the fact that being taken out of Croke Park. Like, the public aren't fooled. And look, I know the hurling attendances haven't been great either, and people will say that they need to improve as well. But at the same time, I always kind of looked at the football championship as this real slow burner, and it tends to it's like a jumbo jet taking off. It's really, really slow and, eases its way off. It's fighter pilot stuff with the hurling championship from the get-go. Like it's Top Gun. It is Top Gun, and it is away we go. And, looking forward to it all again this weekend. I can't wait.
Top Gun.
The Iceman has spoken. My only observation to add to that before we finish is that in the last couple of weeks, the hurling snob has been overtaken by the Munster hurling snob.
Yeah, you knew it was coming.
We have a group in the pundits group, and there's a lot of the Dalos and the John Millans and Donal Logues and Shane McGrath and Brendan Cummins and all the boys. Now, they're not all commenting, but there was a nice bit of the day has dawned last Sunday morning, etc., etc. And I didn't say it, but I was going to say the Munster hurling snob is alive and well. But we'll have to give you the due credit at the minute that, like, the last number of years so we have 5 teams, and okay, Waterford haven't been maybe the last couple of years, but you have 5 teams as evenly matched, like under day, with so many brilliant players, and anything can literally happen. And hurling, it's so instinctive, like a ball or two. Like you saw the old style approach last week to, like, the high ball in. Like Brian Hayes, we didn't get into individual performances, but like the performance he gave, and Peter Duggan up the other end, like this. Shannon come on in and caught a ball, like the size of it, like the physicality of these players. But like, what I loved about it was Clare were getting absolutely annihilated in the first half, but there was no question of dropping anybody back or whatever. We just keep going and go at it. And, we saw the years there of the +1 or the sweeper or whatever, anyone, and I was always giving out about it. And yet, even last week in the commentary, I was sort of saying, Jesus, Clare need to drop someone back here. Because, you sort of question yourself as the time goes on as well. But there was no question of that with Mr. Lohan. We'll keep going here and we'll keep fighting it out. And you saw him after the All-Ireland last year, like the comments he made about defenders, like, your job is to mark your man. Like, and it's brilliant and it's refreshing and it is your job, and you're getting no help from me here, or from anybody else. Get out there and do it. And the teams playing the likeness of their manager. That's an old thing in my head. And when your team is playing bad, you have to take it. What did I do as well? And so I admire. Like, many people talk about managers for different reasons and expenses and money. Like, they get whatever the few quid they get, which is not that much. I can guarantee you that. They earn it. They earn it the hard way, and what they're given to us all, what these players are given to us, and these, like, it's unbelievable what it does for your lives and your day-to-day lives and your enjoyment and the pep in everyone's step. Like, there's zero on anybody else's tongue in Offaly this week, only this match on Saturday against Galway, and the same in every county. And it keeps us going, and And after, I don't know if you saw that little promo Offaly put up last night on Twitter for the match. Like Pádraig O'Meara or PRO deserves, like it was brilliant. Like, and I texted him back and I said I'd gone looking for the boots. Like, and
I'm ready.
Just to do the line or cause trouble or something. But I'm fourth official. But anyway, no, it's brilliant, lads, and it's only early days.
Roll on the weekend.
Roll on the weekend is right. Michael, listen, thanks a million for being with us. Enjoy the weekend. And to everybody else, wherever you're going, hopefully the sun shines and the matches are brilliant. And we'll talk to you after the weekend.
Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point.